This is gonna be all split weird because my mic keeps fucking up, but we'll just start at tier 8 again. Um, I kind of considered these players as, um, yeah, these are when you're gonna get to your ranked players. Sometimes they'll have very good years, really climb up, probably in 30s in the ranking. I know is that I don't really expect these guys to make top 32 at SmashCon. Um, they can lose like kind of consistently to the tier above, or if the matchups are just kind of weird. It's like OJ. OJ kind of specializing against like the top half of the cast. Um, or these guys maybe just aren't, maybe not as seasoned or traveled enough to bust up on some of these guys. Tier 9, Bo the Gid, Super Box, the Bear, Huntsman, Empty, and Shears. Probably could argue these guys a little higher. Especially Bo, who like this honestly doesn't travel much, but just kind of kills it anytime he does. I mean, he kind of stays local to Texas. I'd like to see him come out a bit more, but um, doesn't really have many weird losses outside of like say Sir Eddie back at Low Tide, but that was a while ago at this point. Um, the Yid's just been getting better and better. Uh, has some super impressive wins. And some impressive brackets in general. Soup is one that you can definitely consider a lot higher than this tier, but he's just a little inconsistent when it comes to console. But he's kind of dedicated to the grind though. I can see him placing in a much higher tier, assuming he kind of gets that floor addressed, which I think he's getting a little better at. He's got some ideas. Um, yeah, I have some also international slash West Coast equivalents, mostly because I don't these are kind of more so results than vibes based because I've never really played these guys too much, or it's just been a while. Like Quincy, Kaoken, Let's Go, and Connor is what I've listed. All impressive players in their own right, but it's not ones I'm like as confident as placing on the list. So tier 6, these guys like any given day probably favorites to make top 32 at SmashCon, at least like make a D1 run. Um, doesn't always happen. Some may ask, should I really be here? And to that I say, I'm even better than this, bro. But anyways, so yeah, some of these guys like I'd probably put in like a tier 5.5 if I was being really picky. Um, like Raichu is always like kind of liable to punch above his weight class. Hotlines, I think he's better than his recent results for sure. Um, like EG, like he's definitely one that can really beat up above his weight class. Antoine's already proven that. Wins over Hero Pie Low lately. He's got wins over Mercy. A lot of players that we consider kind of like that, you know, top 10-ish in North America. A lot of them are like best of threes though. Not to like knock the guy, but um, like some of these guys, I want them to show that they're able to do it like deep in bracket rather than just a pull set for some of these wins. Waxy, another one who had one of the craziest tournaments we've ever seen, both in like placing above their seed and just the sheer amount of players he's beaten. CTG, love the guy. Every time we seem to kind of mentally count him out, he's just back with like another really good placing, really good wins. Um, like some of these other guys I consider a little more inconsistent in this group. Um, I think JPX. I don't know if everyone would have him here. Um, But when the guy has a good mental, he's very, very, very good. And we don't. He's got like a really sick cast too. He's Yoshi's definitely his main, but the guy's threatening with a lot of characters. Um, yeah, like Beef in this year. Beef's had a crazy, crazy Keystone. Went over KD3. So yeah, I think in general, like all of these guys have had like that kind of marquee win, or that like kind of crazy tournament that separates them from the tier below. Um, yeah, I guess some examples that come to mind. Uh, like Frank has. Dude, I'd have to look it up. I think he beat Crovy at some point. Um, he beat. I don't remember. He had a crazy year last year though. Um, like Beef has that KD win. I stole one off tacos. Um, like CTG, I think like there's a lot of good Pikas that he smashed. Waxy, of course, beating Alvin and Take. Antoine beating Mercy and Hero Pie. Egg beating Hammerheart, etc., etc. Raichu beating Zero. Yeah, I can don't have the mental notes for all of them, but yeah, I think some of these guys who maybe haven't quite had the tournament that they, at least on some level, that I think are there skill wise. I think Paco's super good. I think he'll have that crazy tournament soon enough. Same with ETAB too. He's just been improving like crazy. Um, so I think there's going to be a few players that he'll surprise pretty soon. Um, on to the next one, Tier 5. These guys, like, pretty much no doubt make top 32 at SSC. They're just a little too good at the game. They're, like, I don't know. They just got, like, matchups really planned out. They're either really good with, like, a couple characters, or some of them have, like, a hodgepodge, like a crew of characters that will just whip out and really fuck people up with. Yeah, I consider these guys like the gatekeepers for like the upper echelon. This is when the floor just starts getting super consistent. Probably only exception results wise here being Janko. I don't know if he's quite proved it on console, but I think people in the know would consider him about the skill level. Um, and they're like, because they're so good at the game, they're almost never gonna get blown out. Like even the tiers like 2 or 3 above, like they're at least gonna make it competitive, even if they're not gonna win. So tier 4, I kind of consider these guys as a lock for top 16 most tournaments for SSC, and can make top 8 if things go in favor for them. That being Dog, She-Man, Hero Pie, Zero, Hammerheart, and Robert when he has a competing bug. My international equivalent, I included Joshi here. Hard to gauge international players, but he's traveled a lot, so fairly confident with that pick. Yeah. Some of these guys you could probably argue a little lower, a little higher. You know, yeah, for sure, but maybe comes down to preference for some of these guys. But I think they've all firmly separated them from the tier below. A big zero. Don't know where that came from. It's probably when I dropped my water. So tier 3, these guys will, and have taken sets off tiers 1 and 2. At least like in an international sense. We got Jaime, KD, Brody, Mercy, Low. And then the 2 asterisk picks, 0 if you practice an emulator SKG, which I don't know if we'll ever see either of those, but we know it to be true. So like just some examples of some of the players they've beaten. Mercy has a set win over Nax last year, which was, I think, Nax's only loss outside of Kuraba. They're also like players in this year probably will trade sets here and there, or it might be to the point where they'll maybe have like a very favorable matchup head to head. I don't have many examples of that, but yeah, like maybe like KD3, Jaime. I consider them like same tier of player, but Jaime seems to have a hard time with KD. Yeah, these guys like very likely can make top 8. And then your regionals, like your Apex type tournament, they're winning those. So tier 2, only 2 players I consider here. Yeah, Kara Wizzy. They're very, very close to the top. They have undeniable floors. These guys just like don't lose anyone anymore. Like Karo's losses like lately, outside of like I think She-Man last year was like a loss to it's like he loses to Isaiah. And Boom, when Boom's playing a good character. And even then, like, I don't know. The guy just does not lose a lot. There's like some matchups that like I don't even like. Maybe they shouldn't even be outside of tier 1 because some of it just comes down to just who they've been playing. So we haven't really seen Karo Nax or Karo Wario, or like he did beat Kyosuke, which a lot of people consider that tier 1. I consider Kyosuke more so in this tier, at least in North American tournaments. I just don't think he's prepped for how weird Falcon is compared to J version. And I think most really, really good Pikachus are beating him. But yeah, so yeah, one could argue that there's like a tier 1A, 1B. This would be like the 1B. And really the only thing that separates the 2 guys above this tier are they win tournaments and they beat these guys plus everyone else. And that would be Boom and Isaiah, kind of undisputed at this point. 2 best North American players at this point and of all time, and typically at any point except when they're sandbagging. The only time these players will really lose any matches at all or like sets is maybe like a really wacky best of 3, or if they're sandbagging heavy with like some garbage tier characters. I would say like, but the thing is like they can both compete with some of those characters too. Not that it moves the needle too much, but we saw Isaiah still have like a really impressive Linkafest locking in Fox. Boom second at Xanadu locking in Fox. Isaiah winning one of the Keystones. Not this year's, but the last, with mostly Mario and Yoshi against like KD3 and Dogs, which we of course seen as tiers 3 and 4. So yeah, these guys are these are favorites to win any tournament ever. Favorites to win SmashCon. So like as far as like what I had listed here, I do think tier 2 can win SmashCon, but they need more things to go their way as far as like bracket luck goes. And that's kind of why I considered like Kyosuke in this tier because even though he's proven that he can probably do it against like a Wizzy and maybe Kurabo led bracket, I just don't see him like touching any of the really good Pikachus. And kind of same with Kero. Like Kero, I think at this point, until proven otherwise, Kero would have to avoid Isaiah and Boom, and likely Alvin too, assuming Alvin's practiced to win a tournament like that. But he's improved a lot. So yeah. So I listed some international equivalents. You can argue some of these lower. Alvin, of course, like yeah, he had a pretty rough SSC, but I feel like every time he's kind of counted out, he comes back. And even with like how bad his SSC was, like could have been worse. He's still taking games off Kuraba and Boom. I don't know if he faced Wizzy, but he has a pretty bad head-to-head against Wizzy in the history. So yeah, kind of jokey, but tiered, not ordered. That is true. Didn't order any of these. 90% of vibes, 5% perceived skill, 5% of results. I don't have an exact aggregate ranking of how I came up with these. It's just kind of how I feel. So yeah, let me know what you guys thought, anything I can do better. If you want background music, whatever. I probably won't be making content a ton, but it's something I've been thinking about, and I just wanted to get it out to the community. So appreciate you for tuning in, and until Smash 64 perceived skill in a 1.8, I will catch y'all later.